It is the Obstructed View podcast. And boy, that was really, we did a thing with Will Turboff from 247 where we broke down Baylor's new football recruiting class and had a lot of fun with that and covered a lot of ground. And I think you're going to, enjoy that. So look for that on YouTube, wherever you subscribe. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel on the Obstructed View podcast. And then, of course, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you get your podcast. I want you to be a part of this thing and subscribe. I thought right now we would talk about that Baylor loss at UConn. I got to say, I came away with some real positive feelings from that. You never like to lose, but given the fact that the Bears, how they looked against Gonzaga on a neutral floor, how they looked against Tennessee, quite frankly, the awful starts. I mean, Scott talked about on my radio show at ESPN Central Texas about like what they were going to try to do to get off to better starts. They were going to have a longer warm up. They were trying to maybe work on their offense and some of the things they were trying to get to earlier in games. And so they did some things, and I got to say, they threw a haymaker out there against UConn. They lost that game. UConn was coming off a horrid performance in Maui, and it really drove Dan Hurley to the brink. I thought if he lost this game against Baylor, I didn't know what he was going to do. I mean, he's really kind of lost it with officials and the way he handles himself on the sideline. He did have some freak out moments, but honestly, it was in joy because one of his players came off the bench and hit a couple of threes, and Dan Hurley went nuts and started like throwing the guy around and got real excited. So I would say that was a better version of Dan Hurley. It wasn't quite as combative and abusive. I mean, again, the way he was treating the refs in that Maui Invitational was an embarrassment, especially for someone of his magnitude. The Lakers tried to hire. I mean, can you imagine him trying to make it through an NBA season? Let me give you thoughts on how the team played at UConn. I'll have Scott Drew on soon, and we'll break some things down on that on some different fronts. And Nikki Collin and Baylor beat up on Southern last night, beat them like 101 to 20 something. So it was not even. You got to play those games, and you got to try to stay sharp and all of that. It doesn't really do anybody any good, except maybe helps Baylor just kind of maybe see some reserves. But those kind of lopsided games are just kind of worthless, it seems like, at least for the fans. I mean, nobody wants to watch somebody do it against a helpless team, but it happens. And both men and women, you got to load up your schedule, and you can't go out there and play UConn or Oregon or Indiana, some of the other teams, but the Baylor women have played. And UConn in the past, I was talking about the men, actually. I kind of combined their schedules. But let me talk about last night's 76-72 loss to UConn. First of all, good start. They're winning at halftime. I mean, I thought some of the defense was really good. They've got some the defense got a lot better. I mean, the thing they have to figure out how to do is guard some of those ball screens. Like you'll have Omer come up and show, and then against whoever's out there, and then he'll just kind of leave, and that leaves the player. There was a kid named Solo Ball for them, Liam McNeely also, who has ties to the Baylor program. He's a freshman, McDonald's All-American. He played well in that game, had 17 for UConn. They just got hurt on some open threes. You're going to give up some threes. You just don't like to do it on like defensive breakdowns. And I thought they had a couple of those where they ended up leaving people wide open. So they're up by one at halftime, in pretty good shape. I thought, I didn't see anything about that UConn roster. I know they were missing Caravan, who's a very good player and was a extremely important part of their national championship team. And of course they've had back-to-back national championships, but I thought Baylor ended up missing their players more than anybody UConn missed. Baylor did not have VJ Edge come in this game. Their freshman phenom, and he's struggling with a hamstring, and I think they're just being cautious. He doesn't really strike me. Again, we don't know him that well yet. He hadn't been around that long, but just the way he tried to play through an injury recently, I don't think this is going to be one of those things like we've seen with Langston Love, like, oh my gosh, is this going to be a lingering issue? I don't sense that. I think they're just trying to calm it down and thought it was wise not to play him in that game. Roach plays in the first half, was playing well, was hitting shots, had 9 points at halftime, comes out in the second half, and I thought he had some great drives. He didn't finish all of them, but he really is smooth getting to the rim, and he gets hurt early in the second half, and he had to leave the court. They announced that he was in concussion protocol. I mean, I thought it was something else that he awkwardly landed or something, but anyway, he seemed to be fine. He was on the bench interacting with his teammates, but I mean, again, you've got to take those things very seriously, and they'll put him in the protocol, and we'll see how long that lasts. That said, even with all the foul trouble and the fact that Celestine really couldn't buy a shot, he got in foul trouble. You were limited in what you could do. Then Omier gets in foul trouble. Langston, I mean, there were some really good things, though, that come out of this game. Langston Love looks more like himself. He hit some threes. He had some good drives. He's an incredibly strong guy. He's got great size for a guard. I mean, it's a 6'5" dude who's built like a truck. He made some tough shots. He made threes. I mean, Langston, to score 16 did feel like quite a breakthrough. And so when you have a guy like Langston coming back and you get VJ back, and hopefully you get Roach to bounce back pretty quickly. I mean, you see the makings of what this team could be. Now, Omier, they got to find Omier is such a hard worker, great rebounder, tough defender. They've got to find a better way to. I mean, I think he will be able to hit some threes, but he's going to really help them on offense, and they've got to find better ways to feed him the ball, just get him in better spots, because he was just kind of getting the ball too far away from the basket and kind of trying to create. It was like awkward. And then the second half, they just weren't finding him like they were in the first half. He's a good finisher. He's great around the rim. He does so many things well. So that's got to be one thing. And they pointed that out on the broadcast. I mean, now, huge positive. Rob Wright is just like light years ahead of where I thought he was going to be. I thought he would eventually be a really, really fine player for the Bears, but I thought it might be kind of like, LJ Cryer, where he has to kind of, or even when they brought in the Finnish guy, Miro Little, I thought it was going to be like the first year might have to be, just playing here and there. This is like, he's not only like a huge rotation guy. I mean, when he doesn't start, he and Langston are going to be the first guys off the bench. I don't know what you do, because Nunn's also such a great player, and he ignites you, and they feed off his energy. But I don't know how you keep Rob Wright out of the starting lineup. And again, I don't want to create chaos or problems. And, Scott Drew has been doing this a long time, and we'll figure this out. But my gosh, they're better when he's on the court. I mean, they're better when he's running the team. He had 22 points, 4 assists, and no turnovers in that game last night. He's a tremendous three-point shooter. He's a great finisher. I mean, he had like a beautiful reverse layup late in that game. He's thick enough, even as a freshman, that he can finish over bigger dudes. He's just one of the best players on the team already. And so I don't know. I mean, right now, you're deep at guard. You had Roach and VJ out of that game, and because this guy is so good, you were okay. You almost had a chance to win that game because of Rob Wright. And this team's going to have to get better free throw shooting. Last year's team, they kind of got it going, and Yves Misi, he got better at the line. He improved more in season than almost anybody I've ever seen. It was just like, whoa. I mean, by the end of the season, he was a really excellent free throw shooter. It was crazy to watch that transformation. They've got guys that with great strokes who are missing free throws. I mean, Celestine's got too great of a stroke. Same thing with Rob. I mean, Rob, the way he shoots the ball, he really should be an 80 to 85% free throw shooter. That's just how good he is. Most of those guys. The same thing with Roach. These guys are just such tremendous shooters that there's just there's no excuse for them continuing to struggle at the free throw line. And not only did UConn shoot the ball better from the free throw line, they got to the line more. And you might say, well, that was because they were on the road. Maybe. I mean, there were some curious calls in that game. But again, I know a lot of Baylor people are like, oh, we're playing 5 on 8 and stuff. Well, maybe. But, I mean, like, I thought that was that 3 that they counted. I thought for sure they were going to keep that off the board because I thought that it looked like that somebody got up there, and trying to think if that was who that was on that play. It might have been Josh, interfered with the shot. I mean, he didn't touch the ball, but it looked like he touched the rim, and I thought for sure they were not going to allow that. When they did, I thought, oh my gosh, it's great. It seemed like a big break for the Bears, and it put them within 1 or put them within 2. Like it was like during a break that happened, and you're just right back in the game. So I thought big moment late was Josh, who, man, I thought it was John when he played. I know he scored 3 points, but had 14 rebounds, rebounded everything. Played pretty tough on defense. I got no problem with the way this guy's playing, except for sometimes he's not going up strong in traffic, and the Bears had a chance to tie that game late. And I just think climbing that second half mountain and putting UConn in a tie game was going to cause a lot of nerves in that building and a lot of nerves with that UConn team. And so that was something that we'll continue to watch. Bears will, I mean, that's the thing. The Baylor women have conference coming up very quickly. I mean, it's going to be here before you know it. It's like December 21st. They go to Kansas. And so it's right there. It's on us. And in case you missed it, on my radio show, I had Nikki Collin on, and she shared that the new player, Aaliyah Matharu from Florida, who is a big-time scorer, going to be a great addition, could be with the Bears as early as the 18th. They have a game on the 18th, and then they open conference on the 21st. Would that not be unbelievable for an already very talented and deep team to get another scorer? And I mean, I don't know who's going to be the leading scorer on this team. Bugs sometimes. Nettie's really good, the transfer from Colorado. But this player is not coming in hat in hand like, hey, I'm just going to be a role player. This is a scoring dude. Whoa. And she could have a huge impact. I mean, there were games when she was with Florida that she scored 35 points. She scored 35 points against Vandy in a game. I mean, I'll take that. Bring her in and let's get this team rolling. And because you're going to have to, because Iowa State and Texas, and Kansas, and I mean, this is a good group. I mean, I say Texas, they're not in the conference anymore. I'm still looking at their record and thinking, but there are some excellent teams. Iowa State got it handed to them. Oh, TCU's the team that's kind of come out of nowhere and is sitting there at like number 9 in the country. It's unbelievable. This guy's in his second year. They went out and hired somebody. He'd been at, I think, Oregon or wherever, and he's had a tremendous impact. You get a hire right, really in any sport, but women's basketball, man, you can flip that thing in a hurry. And TCU has done that, and they've just made the road tougher. Man, I don't miss Texas and OU right now because they are very, very good at women's basketball. So good riddance. Go let them beat up on some people in the SEC, and then or let them get beaten up by South Carolina, and we'll just keep enjoying Big 12 basketball. So lots coming up, but I just thought that Baylor really turned the corner and took a step in the right direction as the men played there at UConn, and then they'll get going. And like New Year's Eve, this thing starts. I mean, they'll be starting conference play as the Bears are hopefully getting ready to play their bowl game. And we've had that happen before, by the way. I was trying to remember where we were. Could have been Houston, could have been San Antonio, but we were somewhere for a bowl game, and the Bears had a big game that day. And in fact, I remember us having Jerome Tang, I think, jumped on our pregame show, our Baylor pregame show. So we appreciate, by the way, I'm sure they'll partner with us in some way, but the Office of Baylor Alumni for what they do as part of our radio gig. I love our folks at Rogue Rogue Media Network. We got more and more people wanting to partner with this show, and that's an exciting thing. And we'll soon have announcements on that end of things. But I just wanted to talk a little Baylor basketball, and I'm trying to think if there's any player on that team that I didn't really speak on. I think I hit pretty much everything I needed to, and so Baylor basketball will get going here. Book conference coming up, and so they fell to 5-3, but they're fine because with their schedule and everything, they're gonna be. I think they're gonna get rolling. They're good, and they're gonna end up being a 3 or 4 seed, which is totally fine. I mean, you can do really well in the NCAA tournament from those slots, and the Bears have done that in the past. For my man Zach and Jack and his family and the whole his whole crew, and the Rogue Media Network, Mike Hamilton, Corey Dickman, our man Josh, the whole gang. And I think we have somebody new. Scotty's in the mix as well. The whole Rogue Media Network family. We'll see you next time on Obstructed View.
We are Rogue Media Sports.